So this is a continuation of our discussion on MLA citations, and I want to go over some special situations you might find yourself in and what you should do in those situations. So one thing that might happen to you is finding the same information in multiple sources. You're looking for what kinds of diseases cats tend to suffer from, and all the sources you look at say the same one is the most common disease. So what do you do in this case? One of your options is to cite all of them. Cite every single source that gives that information. This really does make you look thorough, so it can be a good boost to the ethos in your argument, as seen in the first example. Another thing you can do is acknowledge multiple sources, but just give one of us a citation for one of them. So say many experts, such as this one, have made this claim, and then give us a citation for that one person so we can check that out. Never just say experts believe this or many sources say this without giving us at least one of those sources. You want to direct your readers to at least one specific example that they can go and verify your information by looking at or find more information from. Another thing that a lot of students worry about, and I don't think this happens actually as much as people worry it will, but what if you read an author that makes a point or comes up with an idea that you already had? So you already thought, hey, this would be a good way to solve bullying, and then you read someone who says the same thing. Well, you can't just not cite them because they did have the idea and they got it published, which is pretty impressive. But you don't have to pretend that you just got the idea from them either. So what you can do is include attributive tags that acknowledge that source, but also give yourself credit as well. So something like, Kathleen Porter reflects my own views when she suggests, or my diagnosis is shared by this person. So you can phrase your sentence, and there's unlimited ways you can do that, to show that this person published this idea, but it's also an idea that you had. Now this also is something that happens. So let's say you're studying, again, using the example of cat diseases, and you read a bunch of articles on cat diseases, and then you're writing your paper, and these facts just pop into your head because you've read a bunch of stuff and you now have this knowledge in your head. It's now kind of your knowledge. What do? Well, unfortunately, you can't take credit for having that knowledge. You still need to give us the source of that information. So you'll probably have to go back through your readings and figure out where that information is from. The good news is that now that we have digital sources, you can do a full text search, so you can go search through them for, say, the term feline leukemia, for example, and you don't have to go flip through a book and look at all the pages. If this happens to you a lot, you might want to consider your note-taking process. So this is going to happen to everybody at some point. You didn't realize that you would need that anecdote or that statistic, and you didn't highlight it and you didn't pay attention to it, but then when you're writing your paper, you realize, oh yeah, that's useful, and then you have to go back and figure out which article that was from, which page. But if this happens a lot, maybe consider your note-taking process. So for example, if you tend to read a lot of essays on the topic without taking notes or highlighting or anything, then you're probably setting yourself up for a lot of trouble having to go back and read them twice. So you want to consider how you can keep track of the information better so you can trace it yourself. Now sometimes you really do have specialized knowledge. So maybe you worked for a vet and that's how you know about cat diseases or guinea pig diseases or something like that. Maybe you have been a lifelong Yankees fan, and so that's how you know statistics on Yankees players that you've just memorized. Now, you still need to cite your source, but you can do that by indicating how you know the knowledge. Say, as a lifelong Yankees fan, I remember the batting average of so-and-so. Or, having owned guinea pigs for more of a decade, I know the two safest antibiotics are. Now, keep in mind that having taken a class on the subject or done some research on the subject is not good enough for your specialized knowledge. You need to make sure that you give us a source. Now, it doesn't hurt to find a source anyway. So maybe, yeah, you have owned guinea pigs or cats or whatever for a long time and you do know some facts about them, but if you find a credible source to back you up, you are only adding to your ethos by giving your readers a very credible source that they can go refer to. So consider going ahead and doing that. Now, what happens, and this is going to be probably the most common situation that you find yourself in from this segment, what happens if you have a source within a source? So you find a great quotation by Mary Green that's included in an article by Johnson. What do? Now, as you advance in your academic career, you're going to reach a point where you have to go find the original argument, the original article. So you would have to go figure out where Mary Green's essay is. And if you can do that, great, do that. Find Mary Green's essay. That's not always possible. In this class, we have a pretty quick timetable, so you don't have lots of time to go find an original source. We don't have the resources maybe some other schools do, so it would be harder for you to go and find maybe some more obscure essays or periodicals if that's from a less accessible source. So here's how you can indicate that you did find that in another source. Now remember, you do have to cite both of them. So you can't just cite Johnson because Johnson wasn't the one who said that. Mary Green was. But you also can't cite Mary Green because then we're going to look at your works cited and we're going to look for Green and she's not going to be there. So we have to know that we're going to need to look in Johnson to see Mary Green. I know some students like to just lift the citation for Mary Green out of Johnson and put it in their works cited and then pretend that they found that article. That's actually academic dishonesty because you did not find that article and read that article. And you also need to make sure that you are acknowledging that you found this source within another source because you can't take responsibility for any mistakes that are made in the quotation if it's taken out of context, those kinds of things. So you need to make sure that we know that you are getting only what Johnson told you. So here are two examples of how to do that. One is to name Mary Green in an attributive tag and then include QTD in Johnson in your parenthetical citation. QTD stands for quoted in. And that is going to be the same whether it's a quotation or a paraphrase. Now let's say you want to put the whole thing in a parenthetical citation. You would use the second example, Green QTD in Johnson. Another thing to note is if you are quoting something that has quotation marks in it, their quotation marks become single quotation marks. So do make sure you keep that in mind. And again, you don't have to memorize your format, right? Just know how to look it up.